how to make your pension last forever. It's essentially looking at the 4% rule versus other pension withdrawal strategies. And the 4% rule means that adjusted for inflation, you take the same amount of money out of your portfolio, although unfortunately there can be times when you actually run out of money, as is what happens with this graph. If you take less money when there are poor stock market returns, then you come out the other side and your pension is intact. And this video looks at some of those strategies. So I'm trying to mitigate the sequence of returns risk. And for the returns I'm modeling here, I'm using the S&P 500 converted into sterling, and then I'm applying UK inflation to that. This is the most reliable data set, and there are fewer outliers. For example, in 1975, the UK stock market grew by 136%. And if you put that through your model, you can get some funny results. So some other strategies you can use in drawdown are, well, first of all, a fixed percent of your portfolio. So you just take 4% from your pension, no matter what its value is. But if the stock market falls heavily, then so does your income. You'll never run out of money because 4% of a pound is 4 pence. So, I mean, technically, there's always something in your pension. A better strategy is called a guardrail strategy, and you can look this up online. This involves setting upper and lower boundaries to the percentage of your pension that you will take. So, for example, 4% could rate around 4.5% and 3.5%. If you hit the upper boundary, so you want to take 4.5% of your pension, that means stock market returns must have been poor. If this happens, then you reduce the amount you withdraw from your pension, but not by the full amount of the reduction in the stock market. So you might take at most a 5% hit in any 1 year. You then repeat this test the next year. If you're still at that upper boundary, then you reduce your withdrawal again by another 5%, and you carry on going until you come within the guardrails, and then you can stabilize your returns. And then ultimately, if your portfolio grows, you might hit the lower boundary and you can start to take out more money, but again, not the most amount that you can take, so it's still building up reserves within your pension. You could also use monetary amounts instead of the percentages that I'm referring to here. So you could say, well, if my pension declines to 500k starting at $1 million, then I'll start to employ these guardrail strategies. So this is similar to a glide path for a pension value that I've mentioned. You might need the purchasing power of £1 million when you retire at 50, but when you really reach 90, you need much less purchasing power. So here we've got the other strategies. So this is taking 6% of your portfolio. So we start off £60,000, comes all the way down to 20,000, ouch, and then bounces up again to about 70,000, then comes back. This one is using a monetary amount for a guardrail. It comes down, 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 stabilizes, then comes up again. This one that's smoother is using the percentage guardrail. And it's also important to note, don't forget the state pensions. So actually you can afford to be maybe a bit more aggressive with your guardrails initially, knowing that, well, when I'm 67, I'm going to get an extra like £10,000. And unfortunately, bad returns in your 50s implies the probability of better returns later on, for example, in your 80s. So your pension will have a bit of a kind of a U shape to it. So let's look at the model. And what we do is we say, okay, you can have UK or US returns. You put the age you want to retire in, you put your initial balance in, and then you select a year to run the simulation from. It then pulls the S&P 500 data, the inflation data, and then you've got compound annual growth rate on your portfolio. And you can see here, I've chosen a very bad year as an example, and initially it's doing horribly, but then over the 40 years it eventually comes back to, well, a not bad amount. And then here I've got all the different scenarios. This is the standard guardrails invented by Guyton and Klinger, and we have lower percentage adjustments initially and then higher percentage adjustments. This is guardrails run off monetary balances. This is no guardrails at all, just taking a straight fixed amount with the purchasing power, and then this says when you run out of money, what year, and then this is just taking 6% of your portfolio. So we've got the graphs here, withdrawal percentages, and the inflation adjusted balance of the portfolio. So we can just play around with what's going on. So if we say I'll just take 2% as a reduction in my pension if I hit the upper boundary, and now what happens, here we go, and the pension is intact and I've got a nice glide path there. So that's brilliant. So thanks Guyton Klinger, because you stopped me running out of money, and that's excellent. So we've got all the data sets here. You can look at it individually, and then this is where I pulled the data from Aswath Damodaran. Got exchange rate data, also put in cyclically adjusted PE ratios if you're interested, US growth as well. So it's a really good model to just play around with, see if you can break it. You select different years, and you'll know exactly when you what the conditions are that cause you to run out of money. So here, if I choose 1980, it just goes completely the other way, and we really have a portfolio that absolutely takes off and flies because we've had a much more positive sequence of returns. And now if we come back and the conclusion. So it's important to note that stock market returns aren't random. Long-term growth after inflation is a function of population and productivity growth. And markets can get overvalued, but negative returns won't last. There'll be mean reversion to a long-term sustainable growth rate. Stock market returns aren't like predicting a dice roll. They're cyclical, and good follows bad. So you can't really use Monte Carlo analysis or random number generators to look at your stock market returns. And remember that economic policy has changed a lot in recent years, and so the older data has a lot less relevance. I think the conclusion from this is that you need to know which scenarios cause you to run out of money. So specifically it's stagflation, where you've got high inflation and negative stock market returns. A guardrail strategy favours changing spending, which you can control, rather than changing your portfolio, which can be stressful and you could make bad decisions. And finally, a glide path for your wealth is an essential tool. So if we look at it here, this is an example glide path. I'll put a link to a video where I explain the spreadsheet that I used to produce this and all the details of how it's done. So essentially, you're building up your wealth, you retire, and then you're drawing down on your wealth, but you're never running out of wealth. And when you've got this glide path and you know, okay, when am I above it, when am I below it, and you take the right actions, which is more in terms of spending rather than in terms of like panic selling, that's the way to have a happy and successful retirement. And I hope you've liked the video. Give it a like, subscribe to the channel, let me know any comments.